Oh, hi guys. So I've been meaning to get to this a lot earlier than now. I feel a little late to the party actually, but little one has had surgery, so I could not do this any sooner. Um, okay, so I've been asked a lot to kind of weigh in on this find by Bocce, um, which is just amazing. And I know that most people already have. So I went away and I had a look at I went back to the docket and was like, okay, what's going on around this time? So this work was done the day before Lively amended her complaint, okay? So where we were in time was the CRD complaint had been filed. Wayfarer had sued the New York Times in California. Lively had sued the Wayfarer parties. Wayfarer parties sued back. And then they amended their complaint. And at this point, everything's just fine and dandy. But there's a few things I think this perjury, like what could they be looking at? Like, well, what perjury have we committed here potentially? And I think there's a few things. Um, my first thought is they were, and I remember commenting on this at the beginning on X and in quite a few videos soon after. The wording from Lively, because we obviously had in Jones Works was constantly referring to, you know, responding to a lawful subpoena, and she was very careful with her wording. Jones Works was quite, sort of careful to, you know, be very clear that in her, as far as she was concerned, she was responding to what was considered a lawful subpoena. And I thought, well, okay, that's when someone's trying too hard, that was the vibe I got. But when Lively filed her amended complaint, one of the things I specifically looked out for was how she was going to address the comments, because Wayfarer in their amended complaint had obviously alleged that there was no subpoena and the communications were stolen. And then Lively did some kind of sleight of hand with words, which we've seen her do time and time and time again. Let's try and make this a bit smaller actually, so it's on the page. Okay. So here is, it was all in a footnote as well. It wasn't in the main text. She didn't address the subpoena in the main text. She just stuffed it into one of her very long footnotes. So what she said is, Ms. Lively obtained the communications set forth in her original complaint through legal process, including a civil subpoena served on Jones Works. In statements to the media and public filings in this court, certain of the defendants and their counsel have baselessly claimed that Miss Lively or her counsel engaged in criminal alteration of these materials. That is false. Jones Works produced the communications to Miss Lively in connection with a lawful subpoena, and the documents included within this complaint are attached in the format in which they were produced, subject to the subpoena. With limited redactions of names, phone numbers, etc., yada, yada, yada. Miss Lively has understood the produced documents and communications have been lawfully obtained, right? Maintained and produced by Jones Works. Miss Lively included all excerpts of communications as produced, which on information and belief were produced in the data extractor programs, that's Cellbrite, default font and format, including, for example, the absence of text emojis, etc., etc. So three times in that footnote, she refers to the subpoena being lawful. Now, it could be that, given that Manat are actually the architect of the whole Van Zan, it could be that actually, who is it who actually works for? Who is this? Vincent B. Oh, so this guy, this guy who's, if we go back to the bill, right? Probably should have checked that. So this Vincent Biagotti, who is charged as, maybe he had some concerns about the way the subpoena come about, because Wilkie, he works for Wilkie, and Wilkie were not part of the Van Zan scam, but Manat were. And it may be that they were just finding out about Van Zan and were like, yeah, we're not sure if this is going to fly. So that's my first thought. It may be, that Manat themselves had some doubts. I doubt that. It makes more sense that this guy has researched perjury and works for the other law firm who were not part of the Van Zan sham. So he's gone away and maybe, questioned whether it is ethical, like many of us did. It may be that we, especially in the exhibit A that was attached to Wayfarer's amended complaint, there was, the side by side of the text messages showing where, things had been cut out from what was put in the CRD and in the New York Times. And then you had Wayfarer then sort of present the full thread of text with the missing text that gave more context. It may be that they saw that and were like, shit, that is very plausible. It could be that they just looked at the allegations and the evidence that Wayfarer had thrown in with it. Things like, the CRD initially suggested to everyone that, there was no intimacy coordinator. And then Wayfarer came in and said, actually, here's a text message to Miss Lively telling her, oh, by the way, we have an intimacy coordinator. Would you like to meet her? And her saying, no, I'm good. Or, Adam Monshine, no, he's not an actor. He's just a friend and he was dumped in this role to, stare at my fanny. It may be that, and it turns out actually the guy is a classically trained actor with more experience, skill, and talent than Lively in his little finger. So, and when you get a series of those things, as happened with all of us, right? When we saw Wayfarer's amended complaint and we saw the receipts, we were all like, yeah, now her story doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I can totally see a way in which Wilkie got spooked and were like, oh crap, we lied. Now, obviously, Wilkie have got to go in with what the client tells them, and technically it was Manat that signed on the CRD, but by being brought into this as like a co-lead law firm, they were kind of agreeing and defending what Lively was saying. So I think that this is definitely Wilkie, probably being taken by surprise on at least one thing. There may be half a dozen things, and they've gone, hold on a minute. Like things like including the metadata, like Lively bit may have been like, well, yeah, I started working with the New York Times only, a few days before, a week before. And then actually it transpires that there's evidence that she was working with them months before. So there's quite a lot we could pick and choose from. They definitely got concerned enough that they did some serious 8.3 hours worth of research into, have we done anything wrong, and how do we, what do we have to do? It looks like it didn't really go anywhere, but it is absolutely wild that they billed Lively for that. And then they're trying to recover that from Wayfarer because that has fuck all to do with defending a defamation lawsuit. It's the same as what was the other thing? There was one other great example. Oh yeah, here we go. So the same guy, Vincent Biagiotti, 1.9 hours, right? In green here in the middle of the screen to review and review and analyze the full motion to dismiss opinion and review and analyze the decision regarding McDowell's motion to intervene. That's Brett McDowell. I was covering his story, right? So I know this motion to intervene. Brett McDowell used to work on Deadpool 2. He was like a stunt and stand-in on Deadpool 2. So effectively, he did, you could say he did some work with Ryan Reynolds. Now, he feels, as we've explained, I've covered him. Mandy Magnan has covered him. Ashley Brianna Eve has covered him. Cassidy McConnell, has covered him. Quite a few of us have covered Brett's story. And there's obviously the whole dog pool, like, you know, the dog that was picked to be dog pool looks exactly like his, his previous service animal. And there was a bit of a, was some of Nice Pool based on him? There was a question over that. I think it's more widely accepted that Nice Pool there's more evidence that he was based on Justin Baldoni. But Dogpool really stood out. So Brett filed a motion to intervene because he wanted some discovery from Ryan Reynolds and from Marvel, who had been subpoenaed. There was nothing to do with Blake Lively in his motion to intervene. It was absolutely nothing to do with her and nothing to do with any defamation claim against her for raising, for speaking out against sexual harassment. But yet they're still going to try and send the bill for looking at his motion to intervene and the judge's order on it. They're still going to send that to Wayfarer. And I can't understand the mentality of that. And, there's a lot of things here, like Gottlieb, over and over and over again. It's not just Gottlieb. You got Gottlieb's. Well, it's quite a few, actually. In yellow, you got Gottlieb's attention to motion for fees and sanctions. Then further down, Kristen Bender uses the same language, attention to Rule 47.1 language, several times. So does Gottlieb. What does that mean? What are you doing? Are you researching something? Are you drafting something? Like, what the fuck does attention mean? That is so non-specific, right? I would challenge that. If I had a bill from, my lawyer for that, I'd be like, okay, but what did you actually do? What did that involve? Did that involve emails, phone calls? Was it research? Did you have a meeting confer? Were you at a hearing? What was going on? What does attention mean? And it's very non-specific, but it always seems to be around some of the biggest bills. Like, there's nearly $3,000 there from Gottlieb for attention to fees and sanctions. 1.5 hours. But he does not explain exactly what he did. And there were so many fees and sanctions motions. Like, which one was it? Was it Rule 11? Was it Rule 47.1? Was it a sanctions motion against Jamie Heath for, the video? Was it the spoliation sanctions? I've even seen them, trying to bill for, meeting and conferring with Jones Works over a spoliation sanctions motion. Like, what has that got to do with defamation claim and defending one from Wayfarer? It's ridiculous. So, that's kind of just a few thoughts I had on the perjury side of things. I think there are a few things, but I think there are some clear moments in the complaint where, things were proven to be not true, such as, there was no intimacy coordinator, right? Lively flatly said that in her CRD, and she had to walk that back because there was text messages telling her in real time, hey, we've got an intimacy coordinator, and stuff about Adam Monshine just being a random person who turned up and was given, a very intimate role because he was Baldoni's friend. They turned out to be not true. I do think that Wilkie were caught surprised by how the subpoena come about. I think when they found out it was how when they found out that it was a subpoena that was kind of put through by a sham lawsuit, I think they were concerned and may have wanted to research any impact or kind of any issues that may come back on them. And then finally, I can't remember the other one actually, but yeah, you kind of get my gist. But in a nutshell, it does actually indicate that, to spend that amount of time on researching perjury and whether you may have committed perjury or your client may have committed perjury, suggests that you did have some very serious and very real concerns that there was perjury somewhere. And if I had to, take a shot, is obviously the allegations themselves, but also I think Van Zandt really took Wilkie by surprise. I don't think they were happy about it. Okay, so that's just my 2 pence worth. Obviously, well done to Bocce as well for finding that. I don't think it went anywhere though, but I do think it's fucking wild that they billed Lively for this. And I'm now trying to pass this on to. I cannot believe they put this in a spreadsheet that's on a public docket. You'd think they would have learnt by now. I've got quite a lot going on with the Darren Henson, the Bye 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 choreographer lawsuit against what is now currently Sony, Marvel, Lance Bass, and Nick Pauly, the dance pool dancer. So there's a few new filings come down, so I want to go through them. But I am going to be now concentrating while we got a bit of a gap between Lively's fees and Wayfarer responding, which I cannot wait to see how they respond to this. I've done a series of PowerPoints on strengths and weaknesses against each defendant because I really want to go through all of this. That's my big case now that I've kind of hooked onto. I also want to talk about where Ryan Reynolds is likely to fit into that lawsuit. I found quite a lot of evidence that would directly implicate him. If Darren Henson ever chose to bring him in and Sean Levy, I think he could do it. And another member of NSYNC, actually. I think there's grounds for that too. So, and then we've got, then I'll go on to the actual amended filings that have kind of come down. Ooh, I think it's today, actually. Yeah, really recently. Okay, guys. Thanks.